listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and we are here with another special guest and another amazing show. We have Michael Delisser. He is someone that you need to know. He joins us today on a perspective that most people, they might overlook, and it's all about communication today. At 15, he has an amazing story. He was sitting in front row access to Fortune 100 executives, and boy, did he learn some things, because he also noticed that there were some issues. Some of those were let go, and that reason was communication. If we're going to learn and unpack how that inspired him to do what he's doing today, because if we speed up a little bit of the clock, he is also the co-founder of the Delisser Leadership Consulting. You can go to their website, delisserconsulting.com, and we're going to learn about some of the solutions that they have been able to help with multiple businesses, probably, I would say, all around the world at this point, for their future and also current problems. And once again, I just want to speed up and get to our guest today and say, first and foremost, Michael, thank you for clearing your calendar today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yes, I appreciate your time. So I know I kind of speed up the chase a little bit, but kind of slow us down. And it was the backstory of when you were younger, having the opportunity to have that great exposure to a lot of great minds.
Yeah, I actually, my father was a football coach initially, and then he managed to work his career into being an executive outplacement. So he basically was coaching executives that had been fired from their jobs. And so as a 15-year-old, my dad, would find ways to get me in front of these people he was coaching. He wanted to expose me to what he was doing for a career. And I'll never forget the first one. It was a senior vice president of, I want to say American Express or some big organization where they essentially, the person had been fired because he had ineffective communication habits, right? And he wasn't able to address those. And so I sat in on this coaching session, with the permission of the executive, as my dad was just drilling him in fundamental communication skills and doing things to help raise his awareness of his own ineffective habits that led to his being fired. And after that meeting, I talked to my dad, and my dad said, "What did you think?" And I said, "I was kind of surprised. He's a very successful senior executive. How did he end up getting to this position?" And that's when my dad explained to me the concept of the Peter principle, which is essentially people get promoted to their highest level of incompetence, not competence, but incompetence. And the way it works, person gets promoted based on their technical skills because they're better than everyone else in their individual contributor job. And then they keep getting promoted, but the companies do not provide them with the coaching and or training to be effective in leading people. And once you become a people manager, your success is more dependent on how well you lead others as opposed to whether you can do the technical work. And so the companies inadvertently set up their leaders to fail. And most of the leaders I sat in on watching my dad coach were failing for the same reason. And for the past 25 years, I've been doing, that ignited a passion in me. And for the last 25 years, I've been doing the same work that my father did and a much broader scale. But it's still an issue to this day. And with AI, it's actually getting worse. So
I heard someone say that AI only enhances what people really don't know and don't understand. And so with that point, kind of teach us a little bit about communication based on what you've been able to understand throughout your years of study and being able to recognize these flaws. What's some of the most common bad habits when it comes to leaders with their communication?
A lot of times and what I've developed a list of the most common habits that I see, and they're self-assessments where you can identify which ones are the ones that you do. And there's if you look at interpersonal habits, there's verbal habits, things we do out loud, and then there's nonverbal habits, things we do silently, and it's given away through our nonverbals, things like that. But some of the more common ones that I see a lot: interrupting others, not letting them finish their thoughts or finishing their sentences for them, having kind of emotional reactions that are inappropriate for a workplace, responding too emotionally to something. The list goes on and on. Some people tend to just keep talking. They don't stop, right? And other people are just very blunt in the way they communicate, and they say things that piss other people off. So it's the range is broad. A lot of times it's tied to personality types. And so what I've done is I've put together a series of self-assessments that are in the book that I wrote, and it kind of goes through helping people raise their self-awareness of what are the habits they currently have that may be holding back their career success. And then I give very specific actions they can take to immediately start to improve their ability to communicate and or reduce how often they use those bad habits. So that's one of the many things that I work with leaders on. And my goal is to help them fix these things and increase their self-awareness before they get fired, to prevent that from happening. Whereas when my father was doing it, they had already been fired, and he was just trying to help them find their next job.
And that's a good point, because in today's fast-paced world, it's also very heavily saturated the job market where people are looking. So when you're in the position of having a job, there's probably a long line of people are waiting just for the opportunity for you to go bye-bye and they take your spot. Yeah. So when you think about the pressure that people face as they are being trusted to level up on their place of territory, if you will, on the job, what are some of the things that helps them position themselves better as they sharpen their skills with communication?
I think it's really about self-awareness and relationship development. Those are the two things that they really, and I say self-awareness first, because if you don't have self-awareness, you're not going to recognize that you're doing things to upset others, or you may not realize that the way you communicate is actually holding you back or hurting your ability to be persuasive. So the number one thing you could do is get as much feedback as you can on how you're coming across to others. There's a difference between self-perception and self-awareness. Self-perception is what we think we know about ourselves. Self-awareness is when other people verify it. So, when other people are telling you, yes, that's true about you, that is the habit you use, or this is the strength that you have, it's when you hear that from other people, you can verify that it's true, because other people are seeing it as well. So increasing self-awareness is critical. And then recognizing that relationship development and or being able to have healthy working relationships that cause others to want to work with you, that are motivated, to work with you, those are the things that are really going to stand out in the future. I mentioned AI, technical advances. I mean, when you think about how quickly change is happening and how quickly AI is, influencing that change, on a very rapid scale, what we do technically in our jobs is getting replaced by AI. But what we do on the people side is not, at least not yet. And so our ability to get things done through others is going to become more and more critical as we move forward, as AI and technical advances start to replace a number of the technical things we do now. So in the future, what's going to make people stand out is their ability to know themselves well enough and how they come across to others to strengthen their communication skills to the point that they actually can get better results through others and have strong relationships. And those are the things that are really going to define success in the future. And there's tons of research that backs up, that we're heading in that direction.
And to your point, AI is helping a lot of technical tasks get done faster, sometimes a little bit more polished. But that human side, that rawness of creativity, that intuition, that insight, if you will, robots can't necessarily go beyond that threshold of, okay, let me kind of put two and two together and think about this from an emotional standpoint. What I mean by emotion, I don't mean like feelings like that get in the way and cloud things, but in a way that you are considerate of people's feelings and how people perceive you and how they actually grade you, if you will, on how you communicate well with them. So when you think about that, what are some things that people can start doing right now with AI that will enhance their ability to not just communicate better, but in ways that push them outside of the masses, because it's so easy to blend in but what's some ways that people can stick out better?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, people are starting to use AI for, writing emails and writing communications and things like that. And you can enter in data, and the AI does a pretty good job of overall creating good messaging. But you have to know that if you're creating messages that doesn't align with who you are as a person, then people are going to recognize that whatever was written was not written by you, right? Because you could put in, here are my personality characteristics, here's who I am as a person, this is what I value, things like that, and AI will get smarter in how you use it. But overall, while AI can create an email for you, it can't make the person that works for you feel like you value them. It can't make you, make that person feel like you care about what they're saying. And those are the things that at this point AI hasn't figured out how to do yet. I mean, yes, it can respond on your behalf if you set it up that way, but ultimately, sooner or later, it's going to come down to, did you personally do something that made that person feel like they could trust you and that you value them, or did you not? And so using AI for things like drafting things is great, but you always have to check it. There's always going to be mistakes, and you have to make sure that it aligns with who you are as a person. And so if you create something, and I've done this where I've used AI to draft an email, but I usually make significant changes because it doesn't sound like me, and that's not, it's got to be authentically who you are, or it's just going to feel off for the person who hears it on the other end. They're going to say, you couldn't have possibly written this. This doesn't even sound like you, So knowing that anytime you use AI, you're going to need to put your own personal touch on it would be important.
It's like, which one would you rather have? AI cook you a nice barbecue burger or something, or do you want a human to do it? I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking I'm still going to human, man, because I don't know. There might be some issues with that burger eventually. So when you think about opportunities that people have right now because of the massive growth with technology, a lot of times we don't appreciate the skill of listening. And technology is always going to be there. I mean, you look at how it progressed with entertainment, from watching movies from VHS to DVD to streaming. I mean, listening is a skill set that I believe is timeless. Mm-hmm. It's something that you have to learn. It's not just something I think you're born with. It's something that has to be sharpened throughout time. Yeah. So how important is listening skills going to be part of the process versus, let me just keep up with the latest technology coming out?
Yeah, and I would argue that listening skills is fundamental to your success. Like, if you're not a good listener, you're going to struggle. A lot of times when I'm teaching classes, and I do teach listening skills, but I'll ask the group, what do you think is more powerful, speaking or listening? And more often than not, the group will say speaking, but the correct answer should be listening, because if you listen before you speak, you come across way more intelligent and you're way better to meet the needs of the other person. So it's a prerequisite. Like, if you haven't listened and you just start speaking, you can be completely off the track and not even know it, and I think a lot of people, even in sales, fall into this trap where they'll go out and they'll just start pitching the benefits of their product without even knowing what their customer needs, because they've got this standardized pitch, right? And so your ability to listen and fully understand who you're speaking to, and then the way you respond is critical too. And this is probably one of the most important skills for anyone to develop, is when other people are speaking, our first reaction is just respond with what we want to say. But you need to stop and pause and prove that you heard what they said or what they felt first. So just taking a moment to say, it sounds like it was frustrating for you to go through that experience, or it sounds like that's really important to you to make sure that we fix this problem. Then saying what you're going to say, what you're doing is you're acknowledging them, making them feel heard, making them feel valued, and then you can respond with whatever you're going to do. So I spent a lot of time working with people on, developing those active listening skills. And I will tell you that listening skills can help you stop a lot of the other bad habits that you may have. For example, if your habit is to interrupt people, or your habit is to finish other people's sentences, if you're in your mind thinking, I need to listen to everything they say and then respond with something that proves I heard what they say, that's going to stop you from doing the other habits, because you can't interrupt them if you're trying to listen to make sure that you can respond in a way that proves you heard them. So a lot of times the answer to reducing the habits is becoming really good in dialing in on picking up the words, the tone of voice, and the gestures as if you have to repeat it back to them. And if you imagine in your mind that I'm going to listen to everything this person's saying, and I'm going to say a few things back to them that's going to prove that I heard everything they said, then you respond. By doing that, you can't even interrupt them, because if you're interrupting them, you're not listening, right? So a lot of times, if you know you have a habit and you want to do it, if you can catch yourself doing it, get good at catching yourself, and then just start to listen more effectively, you can start to reduce your use of that habit.
And to that point, it's like I said this a while back. You playing catch back in the day, it was never fun if the person could throw the baseball back to you. Because it's like, man, I might as well just toss the ball in the air and play by myself. That's kind of like what you're saying with a real human connection with listening, because the proof that you are listening is, like you said, you're not just allowing the person to finish what they are saying, their last part of the sentence, but you also are showing proof that you absorb what they just put out in space. And that is important.
If I could take that analogy you just used and twist it another way, the biggest barrier to effectively giving people our attention is multitasking, right? And people multitask all the time. The equivalent, when you multitask while you're talking to someone, it's the equivalent of playing catch with someone but throwing the ball to someone different, right? I mean, they're sitting there waiting for the ball to come to them and you're throwing it to the other person, right? And so when you're sitting there multitasking in front of someone instead of listening, you are essentially saying to that person, you're not important enough for my full attention. And that's a really bad message to send, And so a lot of times I help people raise their awareness of what are their multitasking habits. We have our phones pinging at us. We have, all sorts of things that are distracting us. And, when people realize that multitasking actually damages our ability to stay focused, because every time we get a ping and every time we respond to something else, we're training our brain to stay focused for shorter and shorter periods of time. And over time, you actually lose your ability to stay focused if you are multitasking all the time. And so I get people to reduce doing that and listening again. If you're dialed in 100% on the other person, as if you have to repeat things back to them the way they said it to you, you'll reduce your multitasking habits, you'll reduce your other habits, and you end up making that person feel valued. And that's really what relationship building is all about. So
when you deal with CEOs, they're busy, their calendar is crazy. It changes probably every minute. They might have some times where it's like, man, I just have so much going on in my mind. It's just rapid fire. It's so much going on. Is that an organizational skill problem, or is it letting go problem? In other words, a lot of people like to control everything and be perfect, so to speak, with their schedule. Others, they're like, okay, something gets interrupted, I'm gonna be open-minded. I'm gonna just adjust as life happens.
I think it's a little of both. I think it is an organizational problem in that nowadays everyone's getting pulled in many directions at the same time, right? And so the typical senior leader is carrying much more responsibility than one from 10 or 20 years ago, because companies are flatter. They're being more efficient in the way they run their organizations, and they're asking more people to wear more hats. So I think that's part of the issue, is why we multitask so much, is we all have so much on our plates that it's hard to stay focused. But the other part of it is really more of a personality interest. Like if you're a very results-driven person, a lot of senior executives are. They're about getting to the bottom line and they're task focused, but that same skill that got them to that senior role, being task focused and being able to get things done and being very efficient and effective, can also lead to their eventual demise in their career if they don't also put some people skills attached to that, right? And so when they're not listening, when they're not making other people feel valued, if you're so focused on the outcome what you do is end up making people feel like you don't value them. And so some of it is a personal choice where people just want to keep getting things done and they're almost addicted to getting, things out the door and being in that fire drill all the time. And you have to make an active decision if you have a personality type that's very results driven to take a step back and be in the moment. Show this person in front of you that they are the most important thing at that moment. And if you do that, you could still be results driven, but there's two ways to look at it. It's a short-term investment of your time and focus on the front end of that conversation, right? You're making a commitment to be fully focused, which may cause you not to get to something else, but it gives you long-term dividends because when that person feels valued, they're going to give you more discretionary effort. They're going to want to follow you as a leader, as opposed to if you're so focused on the task, you make them feel like you don't care, then they're going to be less likely to really, bust their butt to support you. So it's one of those things where if you are too task focused and you don't start to work on some of these communication skills, it will eventually catch up with you, just like the executives that my father coached years and years ago.
Once again, listen, Refocused Radio, watching this online, talking to our guest today, Michael Delisser. He has a website. It's delisserconsulting.com. Kind of said earlier in the broadcast that you are the co-founder of Delisser Leadership Consulting. I want you to kind of give us a little billboard, if you don't mind, a little bit about what some of the things you do to help customize leadership and management development programs for your clients.
Yeah, everything I do is customized. I don't like to do anything kind of out of the box because if you were to translate our earlier discussion about listening, I need to be able to listen to my clients and know what their needs are and then custom build something that specifically meets that needs. So the three things I do, a lot of times I'll facilitate strategic planning for executive teams. I'll help them figure out what their strategic needs are for the years moving forward, and I'll manage the process. They come up with the actual results. And then once we know what their needs are and where their talent gaps are, I will custom build programs to meet those talent gaps. So if the executive team needs to work on one or two skills, I'll create a program that's around that. If the frontline leaders need different skills, I'll work on that. But I custom build leadership programs, and then I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people on whatever area of leadership they need to work on or whatever area of communication they work on. For example, a lot of times I work with leaders on presentation skills because they may be good on a one-on-one level, but the nerves and other things kick in, or they've never had formal training in presenting. And so whatever the person's needs is, whether it's working on their interpersonal skills because they're really results driven, or working on their presentation skills because they're more introverted, or maybe they're not naturally extroverted to do those kind of things. Those are the ways that I adapt what I do. And ultimately for me, I just want to make it so that people can really develop the skills that are going to make the biggest difference. And what I refer to them as the leadership core four. So it's presentation skills, meeting management, one-on-one coaching skills, and business writing. And those are kind of the four things that if you can get good at all four of those things as a leader, those are the four things that 90% of the work you do is going to require you to use one of those four means. And so I work a lot with that. And usually it starts with self-awareness, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, if you have habits, or if you're unaware of how you come across when you present, or if you're in meetings and you're not being inclusive and making everybody feel like you care about their opinions, there's so many different things that leaders need to work on. And I figure out what is the one thing. I always apply the 80-20 rule. What's the one or two things that if you worked on will have the 80% of the results, give you your biggest return on your investment. And that's usually what I do. I work with people on whatever that is for them or for the team.
Well, I keep playing my head what you said earlier about if you throw the ball at the whole different person instead of the person that you're supposed to throw the ball to. I mean, it's not that simple, but that's a great way to look at anything. Because I'm a creative, so I kind of think a little bit more abstract than most people that are more rigid and boom, boom, boom. This is ABCD. I'm like, okay, we can do that, but what if we try this thing right here? And that could be a good or bad habit. But I like what you're saying, that if we are more aware of our strengths and truthful to our weakness, then that weakness is an opportunity for us to multiply on what we're already naturally good at. Because the things that we're not naturally good at, can be the very thing that puts us down the spiral of, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting, I think I mentioned in the introduction that before coaching executives, my father was a football coach. He was a football coach for Williams College and for Columbia University. And he used his same techniques that he used to help offensive and defensive linemen. He used to do drills with them, teaching them the fundamentals of blocking, the fundamentals of tackling, right? And he would drill them over and over and over. And he realized that anytime you're trying to change a communication habit, it's basically the same thing. You have to do drills to train your brain to do it differently from how you've been doing it in the past. And I, to this day, still use that same basic philosophy. If I have someone that has a bad communication habit, you've developed that habit over years and years, probably decades. And it will not go away overnight. What you need to do is do daily focus on whatever that one thing is you're working on. And what I would do in coaching with them is I would do drills. If someone was constantly interrupting, we would have a conversation, and one of the parts of the drill would be, you have to count to 3 before you can respond after I'm done. And you do that with them enough times, they start to mentally start to make the adjustment is, I cannot interrupt. I have to wait a couple seconds, right? And so conceptually, if you really want to improve in any area of communication, there is no magic bullet. Like, you have to do the work. You have to have daily discipline. Even if it's one conversation a day, working on just not interrupting, or working on not speaking as long. Another drill I do with people, if someone is really, they babble and they keep going, I will set a timer. And every minute, the little bell goes off and they have to stop talking in 1 minute. And if they didn't convey what they wanted to in 1 minute, too bad, right? So they have to keep working on becoming more condensed, and that raises their awareness, and it starts to get them working on being more condensed and more focused on what they said.
And that's funny because I think in metaphors, I can't help to think of something kind of funny. Like if I was a stand-up comedian, it's like if someone was baking cookies, you better hope they're not baking those cookies for 3 days because there's something wrong. But all jokes aside, for those who are watching, listening to us, and they're listening to this and say, you know what, I need to head over to Michael's website. I need to go to delisserconsulting.com. What can they expect in the very beginning when they realize, and you realize, that they can be a good fit for your services?
Yeah, and what I would say is, look, I'm my biggest thing is I want to help the world communicate more effectively. I mean, look at any of the role models that are out there in the news, and it's not very pretty, right? So what I want to do is just help people improve their self-awareness and their relationships with the people that are most important to them. And a lot of the stuff I do with people at work actually is just as relevant at home. The book I wrote focuses on 3 things. It's emotional intelligence. How do you increase your ability to be more emotionally intelligent, but also your self-awareness on that? I'm helping you realize what communication habits you have that may help you or hurt you. And then also, how does your personality preferences impact your overall effectiveness? And those are the 3 things that the book covers, and there's self-assessments in there. But ultimately, if anyone works with me, my job is about creating measurable improvement in their ability to be self-aware and improve their communication skills. I mean, that's the thing that I do the most and I love the most. And so, you can check out my website, Delisser.com. By the way, it's spelled DELISSER.com. That's an abbreviated version of the same website. But if you go to Delisser.com, there's a link to my book, which is out on Amazon. It's called Leadership Accelerators. And I also have a YouTube channel. And I regularly, when I do podcasts like this or other things, I do snippets out there on all different areas of communication skills and leadership. And so if anyone wants to go out to the Delisser Consulting YouTube page, there's a ton of quick snippets that they can just grab a little bit and work on one thing a day, and so that's another thing that they can do.
Like always, I want to say, first and foremost, those who are watching, listening, thank you for tuning in to the show. Make sure you share it with a friend. Share it with one person. That's your little homework assignment. Just one person, because you'd be surprised what one little move can do. So, like always, I want to say to our guests, Michael, people can go to your website, delisserconsulting.com. But to you, I want to say, come back on the show again, man. This was really a great experience, and I want to say thank you for your time, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, I just want to make a difference in people's lives and improving their relationships, and being able to talk to you, and even if people take away one little snippet from this that allows them to improve a relationship, that makes a big difference to me. And I'll leave with one parting thought, which is, if you want to improve your relationship with anybody, just let go of wishing they were different from who they are. And the minute you let go of that one thing that bothers you about them, you can start to see that relationship improve.
Appreciate that. That's a nice note to end on. So once again, go to unrefocusedradio.com, check this out, and to Michael, you keep doing what you're doing, because I think a lot of people are going to be hitting you up, man. I hope so.
I hope so too. I appreciate your time with you.